Enigmas at the Ancient World video. My name's Luke. Today we're going to be looking at the so-called Serapeum of Saqqara in Egypt, and we're going to talk about how the Serapeum got its name, how it's dated, and how accurate we think Egyptology is on this particular site. So here we are in Saqqara. We're making our way down under the bedrock. The entire Serapeum are tunnels, catacombs, multi-levels, only one level of which is open to the public. Under the bedrock here at Saqqara, I really like the Aten sun design of that over the door, by the way. And you can see already how far down we are under the bedrock. Turn to the left here, and this is a lid from one of the boxes where we actually get the story of the Serapeum, the official story, and we will go back to that. And this is the tunnel around to the right, with my 12 euro hat casting a 500 euro shadow. And this box, this unfinished box, which has lain unmoved in what was not intended to be its final resting place, but has become its final resting place. And Yousef has asked for the lights to be turned off, and we're only about 15-20 feet from the front door, and you can see in the middle of the afternoon, total darkness. I would have walked into that box, can't see anything. So already we're starting to understand the challenges. First of all, you've got to hack this stuff out of the bedrock and then work. It has a wooden floor now, but that wooden floor has been put there to stop all the dust kicking up. So you would have a very dusty environment with no natural light and very hard stone boxes. And as you can see, as Yousef walks past there, this box is not in the center of the corridor, and there's still only about a foot, little over a foot on the side. And this is the lid of that box, also unfinished. And this is a fault. You can see they're scooping the fault out, and we'll see better examples of that, finished examples. These are unfinished. This lid is unfinished, like the box we just saw. And as Christopher Dunn and Yousef like to say, this is one way we can tell that these boxes were actually finished underground, which is very odd. You can see there's an inscription on the lid of this box. This box is made out of rose granite, and it's very heavy. You can see how large just the lid is. And it's from the inscription on the base of that box that Egyptologists have decided when this was created and who created this. This is the box we're talking about. You can see rose granite. It's got the front of palace design on it. I've cleaned up the audio a little bit, and Yousef is going to tell us now the origins of the word Serapeum.
So here we have the symbol. You see the bull right here, and you have the symbol hip, and you have the symbol Uzir. The symbol hip is the one that you see the rope coming down, and the angle and the gate, and then the bull, and then Uzir is the symbol of the eye, and the chair, and the figure of a seated man. But anyway, they say the word Serapis came from the word Ozir Hip. And in some other cases, the word Ozir Hip is written in order, like Ozir Hip. So they still looked at this and also say, label it or like pronounced it Ozir Hip. So Ozir Hip, Ozir became Sir, and Hip became Apis. Yes. And this is where the word Serapis came from.
So, from that inscription, and that inscription only, Egyptologists have decided that this was a temple and a resting place for the Apis bulls. And again, that writing is Greco-Roman time. And I have a feeling that a lot of this stuff is just much older. A lot of these boxes, the blacker boxes, are made out of cyanite with porphyritic diorite. And essentially what that means when you have a porphyritic stone is that there's smaller content of other stone, which makes it even more difficult to cut because it's not just an even material. A couple of the boxes have these indentations, almost like a reverse boss knob. I don't know whether those are original or carved later, but certainly very interesting. This is the only box that was unopened when Auguste Mariette found the Serapeum in 1851, so naturally he dynamited it because they couldn't open the lid. And what was inside? A Serapeum bull, you say? An Apis bull? No, I'm afraid there wasn't anything in it. But you can see the inside is more smooth and more polished than the outside. And I've actually been inside that box. It's just remarkable. And the interior angles, Christopher Dunn got in and measured all these interior angles. They're extremely precise, especially for an ancient culture working in a very, very hard stone. This is actually a stunning example of why this is older than Egyptologists say it is. And you look at the floor around the box. This is work that presumably would have been done by Amenhotep III when he was building it. And you can see the floor has been built around the box. That's not how you build the floor and then you put the box in place. You don't build the floor around the existing box. So this indicates to me that this had been discovered in Amenhotep's time, and they were in the process of repurposing it. And then again, in the Ptolemaic times, it was further used again. And there's proof and examples of that on the final box that we'll get to in a few minutes. On the roof of this box, again, on the end of this box a little bit, you see more of the dimples. You can see from my dramatic jazz hands, I'm talking about those, and this is where they've removed a flaw from the stone where it was threatening to split, and they've hollowed it out and then they've smoothed it. And what's really amazing is that the polish on the interior surface of those dimples is as perfect as it is on the flat surface. And with the ancient techniques of using grit or sand and a stone to polish, it's not really possible to do that on a curved interior surface with the same degree as on a flat surface. So it indicates again that there was perhaps a different technique used that we don't know about, and we'll get to a little bit more of that in a minute. So this is the second box that has some writing on it. And again, you can see that the writing on the box does not match the quality or craftsmanship of the box itself. It's very, very barely carved in. It's very small. And there's some discussion as to whether the Shen ring with Osiris' name is actually in the right place. And this box has been brought out to the end of a corridor, and it's probably the smallest box in there. And we're not sure. Yousef asked us when we were down there, did we think that was its original position, or did we think it had been moved out of this back room? He thinks it's been moved out of this back room. Quite possible. I always look at these and I look at all this rubble on the floor and I go, well, is there anything under that? I assume this rubble has been dumped there, and there isn't, but I don't know. There were definitely times under the step pyramid of Zoser where, the guy was like, and the tunnel ends here, and I'm watching the tunnel go down, underground and off into the distance, and I'm like, it looks like there's some more excavation to be done here, but, that's just me. One way sometimes, though, that hieroglyphs can be useful for dating is when you find broken material like this that was used to repair something, you can see that the repair happened after a certain time. This is a back room. It's usually locked. And it has some really interesting things, and it's got some more sort of repurposed floors. And this rose granite piece, which is cracked right through the center, kind of reminds me of some of the Bolivian sun gates, the way it cracked. But this box, which is in the back room, it's the largest box of them all. The lid itself probably weighs about 50 tons. Never seen anything like this. It's probably almost 7 feet tall, the box. And perfectly carved out inside. We couldn't get that out of there today. Even if we just hacked through the bedrock roof and tried to find cranes, I'm not sure we'd be able to get that out today. certainly not by dragging it through the corridors. How this was done in antiquity, I don't think you can fit enough people down in there. Yousef's done some calculations on the amount of men he thinks it's possible to fit in there when you don't even have a foot on either side of the box, and oxygen requirements and the like. It's going to be very difficult. I can't even imagine trying to move that. Such an impressive piece of stonework, though, and yeah, that's not usually on view to tourists. I don't know why. Again, the interior angles, all of the angles, the inset for the lid to slide into. All of the boxes, by the way, that are open, were open in antiquity. We didn't open any of these boxes except the one that Auguste Mariette dynamited. So all these boxes were open. We have no idea, myths and fantasies and theories about the Apis bulls notwithstanding, we just have no idea. This is one of the cyanite with porphyritic diorite boxes. The pink vein running through it's very, very similar to some of the megalithic work at Abu Sir. And again, as Yousef says, this stone very often comes from the East Desert, which is even more difficult than bringing it from Aswan. Personally, I think you've got problems bringing it from Aswan because just getting large pieces out of the quarry like this down at the river is hard enough. Now imagine dragging it hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of miles across the desert. And with Christopher Dunn and Yousef determining that these boxes were actually finished here, you're dragging the full weight of the initial block that these were made out of. There's some more of my jazz hands talking about the amazing scooping in those boxes, and I already talked about how the polish is perfect on the inside as well as the flat surfaces. And you can still see, the mirror-like reflection of light on the side or end of these boxes. Nobody's coming down here. Look at the dust on the top. Nobody's coming down here and polishing these boxes at all. That's a natural reflective sheen that is thousands and thousands and thousands of years old. You can see the end of this box is a little bit wonky. The angles are different. And Yousef likes to point out that function was more important than form. It was very important that the lid was made from the same piece as the box itself, otherwise the entire piece was discarded. And so as long as the entire piece was functional, it didn't matter if there were flaws or slightly odd angles. So this is the final piece that has the most inscriptions. It's absolutely covered with inscriptions, and this is what Yousef has to say.
But we can see here that the tool was not sharp enough, that it would slide in some parts, and that this is like hardly scratching. When he tried to put more pressure, he's not capable of creating even a straight line. So for me, it's clearly hieroglyphic graffiti that was added to an artifact that is much more ancient there. Then we look on the bottom of the lid, and we can see this part here. It's smooth but not shiny. You see that? Mm-hmm. This is what happened in the end. When you keep smoothing it, this is what you're gonna reach. But to make it shiny like this, and for this shiny surface to reach all the parts deep here, we can look.
See it.
Come look here. You see? And here especially, when the liquid came down here and moved and formed a drop. Mm-hmm. See that? Mm-hmm. And it's reflecting the same shiny surface like that. Huh? And here is the drops. So this is also evidence only by the Kemet school, not nobody else. He's talking about that except us, that it was a liquid. Yes. It's a conclusive evidence that there was a liquid to give the final polishing surface, and forget the idea of the sand. So this is another lost technology, I will call it, because it's not explained in the scenes on the walls, how they that they were using a liquid like that. We know that they used a liquid on the limestone, on the tombs, which was the mix between the egg white and the beeswax, so they can, when they color the scenes, they can use this to isolate it from humidity and stuff like that. But of course, this is wood. This is not it. This is something else that it's even harder than the surface of granite itself.
Porphyritic cyanide.
Porphyritic cyanide, or cyanide with porphyritic diorite.
There you go.
This is the label, of course, by our teacher Susan Moore, the geologist. Cyanide with porphyritic diorite. And it doesn't have to be from Aswan. This can be from the Eastern Desert, which is more challenging, because from Aswan you're going to bring it by the ship. But from the Eastern Desert, all you have is mountains and desert. So imagine sliding 100 ton into the desert all the way till here. And this is one challenge, wherever the destination was from. But actually, to move with 100 ton inside a corridor that is only 2 feet wider than it, that is the real challenge. Because, as I will always say, if I was planning this project, I was going to open this ceiling to the sky. Work with as much workers that I want out there, lay down the box in here, and then build another ceiling on top of it. That was going to be much, much easier than moving in the underground tunnels with 100 tons. Imagine the challenges of maneuvering and turning and lowering it down. This is what we know by, of course, our teacher also, Christopher Dunn, the engineer, that these boxes were being manufactured down here. So imagine manufacturing something like that on an oil lamp. That's like, yeah? The problem is we always want to find the simple and easy answer to show or to explain how can this be done by primitive tools and primitive methods. It cannot.
Occam's razor.
And I am using also the experience of our teacher Christopher Dunn, because he was the first to measure some of these boxes here officially, and also as an engineer he talked with his colleagues and everybody saying like, how can we manufacture one like this? So they told him, we're going to bring many pieces and join it together for each side and for the base, and then carve each one and then join it together. He said, no, we want to manufacture it from one piece. So they told him, it's a challenge. Nobody tried to do this before, but it's a challenge, and we can start with $1 million budget to be able to start like doing that. So imagine for us today, if you want to transfer a chunk like this, you need cranes and workers. You need to find, of course, the quarry first, and then remove it from the quarry, and crane to load it above the ship or the truck that's going to take it to the location you want it to. And then you need special tools to come down here and move with it. Probably these boxes remained down here because nobody could move with it outside. And the only ones that were moved, the ones that were broken into smaller pieces and moved after they were quarried. So definitely I cannot relate and date and identify that box based on translating these writings that I see clearly that it's a very good example, one of the best machining and one of the worstest writings. We have better writings than this. In Saqqara, temple in Abu Sir, we have much better writings. Ramses II even have much better writings than the obelisk. And Merim Pitah has better writings. Yet we know that they usurped artifacts and they took or inherited other things that were older than them.
So there you have Yousef talking about some of the difficulties. Again, look at the reflection on this box and the end. Again, you can see how the slightly damaged parts have just been smoothed out, and then someone's come and done all the hieroglyphic work. But I also want to say, as far as the quarrying, remember as well, with the quarry, stuff this large you have to take from the center of the quarry once you find that vein of stone. And then sometimes you have to go down 11, 15 meters to get a piece big enough. And then you've got to pull that out. And we're talking about a time with no levies, levers, pulleys, wheels, capstans, things like this. So then you got to pull this out. And even if you're just taking it down to the river, it's incredibly hard. You can see some interesting tool marks down there. At the bottom looks like some very heavy work done. So you've got all the logistical problems, and then if you're bringing it down here to finish it, it would suggest that it hasn't even been hollowed out or anything, so you have the full weight of these things, which would have been probably more than 100 tons at that point. And it's just an incredible ancient logistical nightmare. And where are the tools? And I think this is the problem. Egyptologists like, oh, well, if they were using something, where are the tools? Well, that's the problem. I think these things are so old, and the civilization that did this is on the other side, of a cataclysm. And I think that's, where the tools are, whatever the tools are, whether we'd recognize them as tools or not. That's why we're not seeing them. We're seeing remnants of stuff that's either a pyramid itself or underground or inside of a stone structure. That's what's really survived. Will we start recognizing other things as tools? I don't know. I don't know what we'll find, but we, again, as I keep saying in these videos, we've only excavated 15%. So we're going to continue to find something, and hopefully, we'll make some headway. I also want to mention the polish that Yousef talks about, and I want to mention that Alexandria so-called Pompey's pillar, which is a reused pillar, and the polish on that thousands of years later is still amazing. Here's another example of how this is reused. Yousef is pointing to a shen or a cartouche that has no name in it. There's actually two on the back of this. And Yousef believes this is because the priests were going to sell this. They'd come along, this is being repurposed. They carved on the box. Now they're going to put Kunluk, Pharaoh Kunluk, or priest Kunluk, or noble Kunluk is going to go in there. And now this is Kunluk's box. Might actually be Kunluk's Serapeum. We should name it after him. And that's how these things work. If there'd been a name in that, this would have been his box. This would have been done for him. The Serapeum would probably have been done for him. That's how the story works. So there's actually two of those Shen rings there, one on either side. And again, more beautiful interior work where the interior of a flaw has been worked out smooth. And I think it reflects as well on a lot of the incredible boxes that are in the Egyptian Museum. You'll notice almost always that the box has been carved and then polished and finished, and then hieroglyphs have been put on. So how many of those boxes were actually finished earlier and then had hieroglyphs put on them later, time repurposed, inherited, etc.? I think it's something we should consider, strongly consider.
It is very deep.
Yeah. How far back you think is that?
I cannot see the end of it. But what is the function of it?
Right.
And why they just put some of these stones here to bury it, or like
right,
to hide it?
Close
Why
it,
they don't
make sure nobody goes down there
and see? We all know that the Serapeum doesn't end here, that there is other parts in the underground, and they even have it in the drawings.
So there you have it, the Serapeum, multiple levels underground, of which we only have access to this one. But just this one level, I think, is clearly enough to show that there's more to the story of ancient Egypt. The culture, the tools, the structure, the end product, and the purpose. If you would like to see the Serapeum, if you would like to see any of these sites, you can check out the tour that Yousef and Patricia and I are taking in November this year. We still have spaces. You're welcome to come. The information will be at the end of this video. Some of these alcoves are empty. Also interesting to note is that none of the alcoves are diametrically opposite each other. They're staggered. There'd be one on the left and a gap and one on the right.
machine.
Yes, they're very.
Looks like there was some kind of a tool here. I don't know if it's modern or ancient. Something was attached here to the seat. Huh?
Oh, those grooves, yeah.
Yeah, what is it for? I don't think it's something like one of the wheels to drag or something, because the bedrock itself is too soft to handle this pressure, even if you want to use it. There is no sledges underneath it.
Right.
You know what I mean? If they were sliding it, there's supposed to be a slide, no?
Right. I have a feeling it would probably
And
split.
because it's unfinished like this, we know also it was being manufactured down here. The rough machine.
Yeah.
And this was going to be the lid of it.
So the ancient Egyptians were not the only ones to build a floor around a box they couldn't move. We did it as well. I hope you enjoyed this short video on the mysteries of the so-called Serapeum of Saqqara in Egypt. I hope you'll get to go there one day, see all this stuff for yourself. As I said, you're welcome to join Yousef and Patricia and I in November. Got a lot of special permissions on that tour. Thanks for watching.